it's really important to understand that it's okay not to go back to the life that we had. So to do things a little bit differently and to build the life that you want to live. Whereas my life changed in a day and I came out of that experience and it's made me such a better human, coach, professional, friend, wife, daughter. I talk about what led up to that was 3 years of IVF with my husband, 14 rounds of IVF. So I had internal bleeding. I'd already lost 1.8 litres of blood, which is not good. We need to get her under. She's drowning in her own blood. And that's the last thing that I remember, except I kept saying, don't let me die, don't let me die.
What's up, everybody? I want to thank Lumaflex for sponsoring today's episode, but let's jump into today's conversation and I'll share why I'm so excited to have them as a sponsor later on in the episode. I want to start with resilience. When I say the word resilience, what pops into your mind?
It's funny, actually. I was having this conversation not long ago when I was coaching someone. And I think if you asked me that question 3 years ago, the answer would have been very different. It's funny because I know we'll talk more about my journey and my events and things that happen, but I remember standing on stage a little over 3 years ago. I was speaking at a conference and talking about resilience and turning points and things like that. And now I look at it today and think, not that I didn't know what I was talking about, but my perception of it is so different now because of my lived experience. So when we think of resilience, often we think about how we bounce back from things. And once you've been through, it could be the smallest of things or the biggest of things with life. But for me, it's really shifted with how I look at resilience. And I feel it is how you come back from something. I often talk about rising, and other podcasts have named, my rise after what happened. But I also feel that it's really important to understand that it's okay not to go back to the life that we had. So to do things a little bit differently and to build the life that you want to live. So we're fortunate to be able to do these things. And when I look at resilience, it's sort of that moment in time where it really gets us to stop and think and reset and move forward how we want to.
So what, if you can remember, when you were talking about resilience on stage, what was that about and what have you changed your mind on? What's caused that change of mind as well?
To be fair, I think, and this is something that I've found as well through my journey, is it was a lot of textbook stuff. It's resilience and you can do it, and motivational, and that's amazing. And a lot of people need to hear that. And I'm a big advocate for that. But I'm also something that, especially with coaching, you do need to ask the tough questions. You do need to deep dive. You do need to get into the uncomfortable places. And sometimes it's, we often hear about you've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I really understand that now. I think I used to talk about that a lot because that's sort of the textbook thing that everyone, especially when you're speaking at events and you're motivating and you're trying to help drive people. But for me, and I think this is why I'm able to connect with so many different people on a deeper level, whether that be individually or, coaching sessions with groups, is because I've got that lived experience. So I'm not just talking about the fundamentals from the textbook that we all sort of know. We may not practice, but we know. But I feel now that I have that lived experience, people gravitate to me a little bit more because I can understand exactly what they're going through, whether that be professionally, health-wise, anything really. Trauma is a big one because that was something that I went through and had to rebuild from. Yeah.
Yeah. When you step into the world of coaching or wanting to help people, you always you just want to help people, and sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So you read about resilience, you think you know what resilience is because you've done something hard, but then you go through those uncomfortable moments. You're like, that's what it is. And then I feel like you just keep going. Like you said, you lean into that uncomfortable zone and you just keep learning. You're like, oh, that's resilience. Oh no, this is resilience. And it just keeps getting
Yeah,
harder and harder. But as long as you keep, I guess, learning from it, you just keep evolving and you become better and you have those experiences and you're more comfortable with that uncomfortableness, which I do think is resilience.
exactly.
Can
And I
you?
think, sorry,
No, you
just
go.
one
You
more
go.
thing. I think people need to remember that resilience can be anything as well. It can be of the smallest of things that we do on a daily to the bigger things that we change in our lives.
Mm.
Resilience doesn't have it's not boxed in. It's not something that you have to do to say, "Oh, I'm resilient," or "That's resilience." It's the little steps and the big steps and the big goals and everything that we achieve in between.
I had quite a while ago a psychologist on. He was
Mhm.
one of the smartest guys I have ever spoken to. He was amazing.
Love
He
that.
basically invented, or not invented, but made family therapy what it is here in Australia. So his
Wonderful.
team back in the 60s were actually developing what it is now. So he knows what he's done. He's worked with a lot of different people and coached a lot of, well, helped a lot of people through university and through psychology. And I asked him what resilience was, because a lot of the time when we think of resilience, it's like you've got a brick wall and you're hitting against that brick wall and you've got to be that solid brick wall and you can't let anything through. And if you start breaking or be flexible, you're not resilient anymore. And the way he
Exactly.
explained it was just perfect. And it was a complete opposite. He explained it like a bridge. If you made a bridge extremely rigid and solid, it's going to collapse. But a bridge flexes and moves with the wind, weather, with the load going over it. So you've got to be flexible, and everybody experiences that in a completely different way. So yeah, it's a cool topic to talk about, because a lot of people think it has to be, you have to be solid, and I don't know, I guess from a man's point of view, you have to be a brick wall and not let anything break you. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Resilience. Yeah, I love it
Mm.
and could talk about it all day. I think for me personally as well, and you just spoke about, the brick wall, and I I was in corporate for so long. I think I was in corporate for like 15 years, leadership for 12. So I had to have that tough exterior. And when I used to speak of resilience, I think previously I did think of that brick wall, and you
Mm.
can't show that weakness, you can't show that cracking. Whereas my life changed in a day and I came out of that experience, and it's made me such a better human, coach, professional, friend, wife, daughter, friend. It's really softened me in the ways that I needed to be able to relate to people more.
Yep.
And it's not just that textbook, this is what it is. I think you've really got to get into that deeper level to be able to, and it's all about humans, right? And connecting with humans.
Mm. That was a perfect segue. I wanted you to go into your history. So, tell us where you started. You said you were in corporate. So, how did you get into corporate? What was that like? And then what changed? And how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, so I was in corporate for, as I said, 15 years, worked my way up, mostly corporate real estate. So, real estate is quite a male dominated industry. So it did take a little bit of time to break through that. But once I did and gained the respect of my peers, I just started to climb and reach new heights. So the part of my job that I loved, I was a general manager for quite a while, about 10 years. And the thing I loved about that was obviously building businesses and watching that growth on a business level. But it was more the people, human side, and coaching, seeing people achieve their goals, whether that be personal business, and being able to, I always, when I speak to people and I hear people say I'm a manager, and I often say to people, that is the right term. You are a manager, but people will follow you if you are their mentor, are their leader. You don't want to manage people. You don't want to be that dictator. You want people to want to follow you. And that's what makes a good leader. If you've got to, as a leader as well, surround yourself with the most amazing people. You shouldn't be the smartest person in the room. And I often say that to groups that I work with. Surround yourself with incredible people that are amazing at what they do. Just because you're the leader, it doesn't mean that you have to have all of the answers. So I think that's definitely a misconception. So that journey went on for, as I said, 15 years, 10 years or pretty much 10 years in my last role. And then I got to a point where I had corporate burnout, but I also had an event that happened in that time, about a year before I ended up leaving my corporate role, which just literally turned my life upside down. So I'm not sure if you want to go into that right now, but
It's strange how corporate burnout is actually a word for a thing. Like, it shouldn't be something that people have to go through, but now it's just a term that's thrown around that a lot of people go through. So maybe you should dive into it, because I feel like it shouldn't actually be a thing.
it shouldn't be a thing. And you don't actually know that you have it because you just keep going. It's like this hamster wheel that you just keep going, going, going. As a professional, and you would know for yourself as well, you being a high performer, it's that adrenaline. We all love it, and that rush that we get of, it's a bit of an addiction, especially in that corporate world. Corporate's amazing, and a lot of people can be in for a lot of years, and it can be really fun. But then there are some points, if you don't look after yourself, you will crash and burn. And I actually thought that I was doing the right things. Uh, for years, probably 6 years, I was doing all of the wellness things and looking after myself, and saunas and cold plunges, and they're amazing. But I also wasn't looking after probably the mental side that I needed to look after. I was doing all of the physical, but not really looking after and really understanding that I was struggling. And a lot of people around do in corporate. It is, and it's such a tough world to be in. It can be quite cutthroat.
It is crazy how these little red lights can have such a positive impact on your overall health and wellness. I'm actually disappointed in myself for taking so long to get into red light therapy. But there's just so many shitty products out there, and they're super expensive. Like, you're buying these expensive red lights, you put them on your skin, hopefully they're working, you don't know. And it's been crazy to feel the effects. I've been using the Lumaflex Body Pro for a few weeks now, and it is so amazing to actually feel the effects of the red lights after a few days. I've been struggling with plantar fasciitis for too long, 8 months now, maybe. And I was almost at the point where I was going to go down PRP, cortisone, just to get rid of the pain so I could do the exercises to fix it. Like, when your ankle feels like it's going to get ripped off by a blunt butter knife, you really don't want to do the exercises to fix the ankle, the plantar fasciitis. And after 3 days, 4 rounds each day, on the 4th day, the pain was gone. It was crazy. So now I can actually do my exercises to fix the plantar fasciitis pain-free. And I actually went for a run the other day, still pain-free. Crazy. So I'm excited to have Lumaflex as a sponsor of the podcast. If you want to start improving your overall health and wellness with red light therapy, check Lumaflex out. You can hit the link in the description. Use Trueform at the checkout to get 10% off. And I can't wait for you to start feeling the effects of these crazy little red lights as well. Yeah, and like I said, that corporate burnout shouldn't actually be a thing, and a
Yeah.
description for people going through probably a bad time. But like you said, a lot of people are working on the physical. I was the same, had the physical down packed, but the mental health, the spiritual health, it's something you just don't get taught. And again, when you're in that environment and you're trying to be resilient, you just push that down because that's weakness. So
100%.
how did you, what happened for you?
My turning point, the event.
Yeah, yeah,
uh, before I get into that, you just mentioned something that sort of, I did want to touch on, and that is having you don't want to show any weakness. And we spoke about that with resilience. And being in my role, that was something that was very important to me because I'd worked hard to get where I was. And I didn't want people to look at me to think that I was weak in any way or that I couldn't do my job. Or being a woman is a lot harder when you have things that you deal with. Going into the event, if I talk about what led up to that, was 3 years of IVF with my husband. 3 years of IVF, 14 rounds of IVF, cysts that were found, 3 major surgeries, stage 4 endometriosis, which was found through that time, which I now still have even after the surgeries, and it's probably worse now. Obviously losses, miscarriage, and we got to a point, and moving back, I went through that period of no one knowing that I was doing IVF at work. So I was living that
Far
double
out.
life. No one actually knew. I think one other person knew that I confided in, a friend. And I just, as a woman, anyone that's done IVF, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate or know someone that can relate, understand that so much changes when you're doing that process. So I think people looked at me. I'm back to myself now, physically, but I put on about 15 kilos because of the drugs. Yeah, I
Wow.
blew up and I couldn't help that. I could have exercised. There was nothing I could do. So I think people looked at me and thought, what's going on with Kel? But didn't actually know what was happening. So I would go and do my doctor's appointments before work, and you'd have to get your blood tests and internals and things like that. And then I would go and lead a business and teams. And then, you would have to go in for egg collections or transfers. And again, that would be again before work. So it was just this cycle. And I found that after the first few times, it actually became quite easy for me because it became quite structured. I know that sounds very weird, but as a driven professional, it kind of just fit into my life. So doing all of these things, doing the drugs, doing the appointments, just really became part of my everyday life. And the hardest thing was not having people to talk to at work for them to understand what I was going through. I often talk about there was a point in time where I had the phone call from the doctor to say, look, unfortunately, you've had an early pregnancy, but it has been lost. So I was, as you can imagine, I was devastated.
Yeah.
And I was working at home on this day, and my husband Paul was with me, and my phone rang, and it was one of my staff members who was a woman, and I didn't answer it because I wasn't in a good place, and she texted me, and I knew that she was going through her own things, and she texted me and said, can you please call me, it's urgent. And my husband said, don't call, like, you need to look after yourself. And I said, no, she needs me. So I called her, and she was so over the moon. She was pregnant, and she wanted to tell me. So I had to put on that happy, so excited for you, where internally I was just broken. And I got off the phone call, and my husband just looked at me and said, who are you? Like, you are the strongest person that I've ever met. And from that day forward, I really understood that I had that capability to kind of suppress what I needed to at that time to give people, because I had people that counted on me. So going through that and being in my role was difficult. We got to a point where Paul said to me on our 14th round, look, we need to I want you to take a step back. We'd been engaged for a few years. Let's go get married. Let's travel. Let's do all the things that we love doing that we've had to put on hold for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do this last one. We'll have a break and then we can reevaluate. And I said, yeah, that's great. I think I need to as well. So went into the egg collection, which is a very easy process, as I said. Or no, it's not an easy process. You go in, they put you under, and then you come out and your partner picks you up within a couple of hours and you go home and rest. I'd gone into the to get that done. Everything was fine. Paul picked me up. We were literally on driving home, and I just said to him, "There's something wrong. I don't feel well," and I just passed out basically. So he ended up calling our clinic and said, "You need to get an ambulance. Something's going on." We drove straight back to where we had come from, and the ambulance was there. They checked my vitals. Everything seemed fine. They said to Paul, look, we've got to take her to hospital and we'll just check her over, but don't rush because we think it'll be fine. Just come when you can and we'll see you soon." So Paul came home, checked on our golden retriever dog, made sure she was okay. I got taken to hospital. At that time, I felt okay. I was in a bit of pain, but I felt okay. Got to hospital, and I often talk about this. It's funny. I was sitting in, when you get taken by ambulance, you get put into like little sections and you have your curtains and the person next to you. And I remember hearing this old lady come in and she was so stressed and she had done something to her toe or something. It was something. And she was so upset. And I just kept thinking, I'm an empath, so I feel everything. And I just kept thinking, oh, God, the poor darling, like she's probably going to be in here for days and I'm going to be out here soon. And I just, it's the weirdest thought that always comes up, but it does. The team leader doctor came in, and because I'd had surgeries at that hospital previously, they'd had a file on me, and she came in and said, look, I'm just going to check you to make sure let's see what's going on in your stomach. They put the scanning machine on me and all you could see was just black. And it was just like a river and it was just flowing. I didn't know what that was. They did. And she literally threw the machine away. And it's very weird how your body responds to things that happen. I didn't know what was happening. She knew what was happening, and my body knew what was happening. And at that time that she found the issue, my body completely shut down. It was like I just switched off. I found out that I had internal bleeding. So that's what she found when she looked. So I had internal bleeding. I'd already lost 1.8 liters of blood, which is not good. So they were giving me blood transfusions on the way to emergency surgery through the corridor. And I remember them saying, where's your husband? I'm like, you guys told him to come. I was sort of in and out of consciousness, but I think when you are someone like myself, you retain a lot of things. So a lot of things, some people may go through this experience and not remember a lot. Unfortunately, I remembered most. So by the time Paul got to the reception area, they had run out, where's Kelly O'Brien's husband? He's like, I'm here. What's going on? He met me in the corridor. And at that stage, they didn't know if I was going to pull through. So I remember just looking up and there was probably 20 people around me. There was probably 5 or so people around, doctors around Paul. And he had to sign my life away because they just didn't know if I was going to come out of it. The one memory, and I've had to do a lot of work with trauma, PTSD, things like that. And one of the things that I probably will never not ever feel or remember is laying in the bed and looking at Paul and having tears roll down my face. But not like crying, but just I could feel the tears and literally laying there and not being able to speak not being able to move. The only thing I could do was move my finger like that. That's all I could do. And I spoke to Paul when I got out, and we sort of were starting to talk about it. And he said to me, "You looked dead. You had no color." So now I understand that I had nothing in me. I couldn't move. I literally had nothing in me. So I got rushed into emergency surgery. Fortunately, I came out of that and I spent 6 days in ICU. One of the biggest things that I remember at the end was I started to, it's funny when you see movies and people, getting into emergency surgery. I remember it very vividly, and they literally throw you on the bed. I had people straddling me, because I had things everywhere, obviously blood transfusions. And I remember starting to not being able to breathe, and I had the mask on my face, and I just kept saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And the team leader doctor who found it was at my head, and she started screaming, "We need to get her under. She's drowning in her own blood." And that's the last thing that I remember, except I kept saying, "Don't let me die, don't let me die." Then the next stage of that was me going into, so when I came out of it, I remember my grandma or my nana, who I was very close to, came to me. So she's passed, and she said, "You silly little girl, you've got to stop this. You're going to be okay. Just keep fighting." And, little things it was like little picture postcards of people that I knew in primary school, which I've never thought about, or just random things. But the last thing I remember seeing is me in my wedding dress with Paul at our wedding, which hadn't happened yet. So I guess my brain was trying to tell my body that, keep fighting and you'll get through this. So then I woke up in ICU. And as I said, I was in there for 6 days. And then, yeah, that's the story.
Far out. I appreciate you telling that story. That's, yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in, and I can't even imagine what it was like for you. Or Paul as well, like far out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a big thing, and we look at me and what I went through, and I often say this to people, being the person that's going through it is awful. Don't get me wrong, but it's often easier because the people that are seeing you go through it, Paul had to literally sign my life away and say goodbye to me. Then he had to step out and call my parents who live in Queensland to say, "I don't know if Kel's coming out." So, and then obviously your friends and your family and everyone that becomes involved in your recovery and just it extends so much more. But yeah, it's trauma and events like that are a funny thing. And I came out
Yeah.
of it a broken person. I was broken for, you know, you're never really truly going to be completely healed from that. But I was a shell of myself for probably a month or so. I didn't want to leave the house, which is not me. I couldn't even look at my phone. I couldn't look at my computer. I couldn't talk to people. I would have people that I love, my family, my friends calling, and I would say to Paul, "I just can't talk to anyone." And I actually it was my brother who's in New Zealand, and he called me and said, "I know you don't want to talk to anyone at this time, but we need to start getting you to talk to people." So maybe every couple of days, just have a conversation, whether it's 5 minutes, even if it's just you listening to someone, just having that touch with your humans and your people. And I think that was a really big thing that helped me to recover as well as I did, and to also move forward the way I did.
How long ago was that?
It'll be 3 years ago this September.
So fast forward, I guess, 12 months after that happened. What did that look like? Like you said, you were broken. Like you had to rebuild. What was the
Mm.
rebuilding process like?
So I went back to work quite quickly, which when I look at it now was not in my best interest. It was in the best interest of the company and my team. But my doctor wanted me to have 3 months off, and I had probably just over a month because, again, I didn't want to seem weak or that I couldn't do my role.
Mm.
But when I went back, I really understood that what I was doing, I loved, but I think I was meant to do more. And prior to what happened to me, I've always loved wellness. I've always loved helping people, and that's always been a really big passion of mine. So after this happened, it just really became apparent that that's the journey that I needed to go on. So in the background, I was growing and looking at, okay, what's next for me? I still worked in my corporate role for just over a year and then left that role and started my own company.
Mm. What was that like? Stepping out of that and then into your own thing that you've manifested, I guess you could say, into like going through that, going back to work, and then stepping into what you've like who you are and what you want to do. What was that like?
It was a weird feeling because, and I had a lot of things going on at that time too. We got married, so I had a couple of months off. It was a very exciting time, but I think I was ready. I know myself, and I know that, especially when my team, I miss them dearly and I love them. But walking away from my role and doing what I was doing on a daily, I didn't miss that. And stepping into something that I'm building myself, yeah, of course. And you would understand this as an owner of a business. You have hard days. And there are some days where you go, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? Or, you know, when I first started Elysium Wellness and Advisory, it was just Elysium Wellness. And my idea was to build wellness spaces and, luxury wellness spaces and recovery and all of that. That was my prime objective. Something that I often teach in business is you have to be willing to pivot. You've got to be okay with that because things are going to get thrown at you that are not in your control, and you've got to be able to roll with that. So when I first started Elysium, as I said, I wanted to build these wellness spaces, and that's still happening. But anyone that's dealt with commercial builds and commercial property, it takes a long time. And I was a little bit naive to that. So I then had to look at the business and think, well, what else is there? How else can I get out there and help people and build this dream that I've got? And that's where I went into uh, providing modalities to people that on a wellness level that, you mentioned Lumaflex, that's one of my biggest ones. And the partnership that I have with John and the Lumaflex team was just an incredible part of my journey. And John is just an absolute legend. I cannot speak more highly of him. But when we decided to partner, um, and for Elysium to be the exclusive distributor for Australia, New Zealand, and Pacific Islands, that was a big thing for me. And it was something that I knew that I was so passionate about because in my recovery, I had used red light and infrared before for my recovery. So I knew it was something that I was going to be using in my spaces. And then when this opportunity to work with John came up, I jumped at it. And that's only been happening over the last 6 or so months. But what we're doing in Australia and beyond is incredible. And I know you're going to be a big part of it with
Mm.
getting it out there, because education is such a big part, and John would have touched on that in your podcast. The education piece is such a big part of that. So that excites me. And then the next stage of the business was the advisory coaching side, which brought me back to my roots and what I absolutely love doing on a daily. And whether that be professional business coaching, teams, or life coaching, trauma, relationships, anything like that, is just, it's just brought me so much joy.
Yeah, like just on how when you start a business, you think you're doing the right thing, but you have days where you just question everything and why you are even existing. But like I said at the start, when you surround yourself with amazing people, it just picks you up again, and it just like, oh yeah, I am doing the right thing. It's funny to hear you describe how, like, when you're in the corporate world, the sort of manager you were, and then what you just said then in your coaching. Like, it's going to be obviously very similar. And you just said, you doing trauma, health, life coaching, all that sort of stuff. But you would have been doing that when you were in corporate managing anyway. You just probably didn't realize it. It's hard to find and be aware of, like, obviously you knew you were a people person and you wanted to help people, but you were just in the wrong setting.
Yeah.
And trying to find the right setting to do that. And it's absolutely amazing that you're there now. It's unfortunate that you had to go through such a traumatic experience to get there. So where I'm going with this is, how do we get other people to be aware, and we can use that corporate burnout word again, if they're in that position, how do we get them aware of what their passion actually is and how to chase it?
That's a really good one. And I feel like people need to be aware of their triggers as well. If you're at work and you're having a bad day, and you're like, oh, today's a crap day, what's triggering you? What has annoyed you for your day to be a crap day? So when I talk to people in the corporate world, you need to understand what are those triggers. And if it's happening at work, or often a lot of people, and I had that feeling, on a Sunday night, you just go down. You're like, I've got work tomorrow. So that's not a good thing. Friday afternoon, you're flying high, and Sunday, you are low. That's not a good combination. So I think being self-aware as to what's triggering you, and when you have those triggers, sitting with it and going, okay, maybe there's something that I'm doing right now that is not fulfilling me and is not what I want to be doing. In my world, when I was doing it, I would just push that to the side, and suppressing things, what I've learned, is not good. Someone said to me that if, especially with trauma and PTSD and near-death experiences, which is something I had to work through, if you don't identify what your trigger is and work through how to manage that with tools, and then one day, whether it be 2 years, 2 days, 10 years, 20 years, you are going to completely fall apart. And I've seen it. I've seen corporate people who are high flyers that you look at on the outside and think they have this perfect life, and then they have a breakdown, or worse, they get sick, or, we talk about mental health, especially men's mental health at the moment. And that's something that every time I see it, I just think, and I try and do what I can to talk to the men in my life to just be like, how are you doing? Especially because it's such a big thing in the world of men, especially in high pressure times.
Yeah. But that's such a good to find out what your triggers are. Like, weekend, it's something that I struggle with, because I don't look forward to the weekend, because I just look forward to every day. Like, I enjoy what I do, and I just want to continue doing it, whether it's a Saturday or a Tuesday. It doesn't really matter. So it's a good thing for people to realize and come to awareness. Like, if you're really looking forward for the weekend or those 2 weeks off you get over Christmas, and that's what you're living for, that is a good point and a good thing to reflect on. And yeah, I see it a lot with men as well. They work during the week and then they're just destroying themselves on the weekend to try and escape their reality, like
Yeah.
alcohol, drugs,
Yeah.
whatever you call it. So yeah, that's a good thing to pick up on, and yeah, take some time. But it's hard because, again, guys got to be that resilient brick wall, and getting them to lean into that discomfort of, oh, this isn't really who I am. This isn't what I want to do. Who am I?
Mm.
It's
Mm.
very hard to steer that conversation into that direction. So any tips or any ways to get guys to sort of lean into that conversation a little bit easier?
I think you've got to ask the right questions. If we're having that chat and you say, God, Kel, I really struggle on a Sunday. Well, okay, why? What are you thinking about at that point in time that turns your complete shift of emotions or feelings, or gives you that anxious feeling? And you're like, well, it's work. It's getting in the car and driving to the office. Well, okay, that's the point. And we need to identify, what is it about work that is triggering you? Oh, well, my manager is hard to work with. Okay, we're getting somewhere. So it's little by little you ask those questions and understand what are those trigger points, and then putting those tools in place to either work through it and the tools that you need to keep going, or having that uncomfortable conversation of, well, Jack, maybe it's not meant for you. Maybe you need to do something else. And I can actually, hand on heart, and you probably also, is it's scared to change. But when you make that change, oh my gosh, it's freeing. And you just mentioned about not looking forward to the weekend. When you actually love what you do, you don't even, I often say to Paul, what day is it? What day are we in? Because you love what you're doing and it's a passion. And whether it be a Monday or a Sunday, you don't mind being on the computer or talking to someone or doing a podcast or doing coaching. It's a funny thing.
Yeah, definitely. So awareness is a big part, like being aware of those emotions, those things you don't want or do want.
Yeah.
How do we get people to start taking more action on those? Because awareness is good, but let's just say that guy that on Sunday afternoon that's hit a brick wall and he's like, don't want to go to work, and then you bring him aware of all these things, the manager, all that sort of stuff. But then Monday comes and he's just going to go through his old routine and get up, go to work in the morning and forget about what he's talked about. So how do we get people to take more action on what they actually want to do and are aware of now?
It's kind of one of those things where you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And oftentimes what we see is people, my experience was different because it was combined with my journey of IVF. But I did have that corporate burnout that I realized when I left, I suffered from majorly. Whereas if people don't make a change, whether it be small or big, at some stage you will burn out. And I think people that they really need to understand that. So really, people need to sit in their emotions and their feelings about what they're feeling, because too often do we feel something and we'll just push it to the side. But if you're feeling that anxious, you're feeling like you really don't want to be there, then you do have to have that tough conversation of, what does it look like if I'm not here? What does my life look like? And I had this conversation with someone the other day, and one of the things that they said to me was, I want more freedom. And I said, okay, well, look at what you're doing now. Look at what your role is. Do you have freedom now? No. Okay. So if we navigated to get you into another role, or for you to do whatever you wanted to do you think that's going to create more freedom for you? Yes. So that's a positive. Why would you stay in a situation that you have now that's not giving you what you want? So it's just really about understanding what you want and working out, is your current position giving that to you? Or is there something out there that will be able to fulfill what you're wanting? Does that make sense?
100%. And you're right. Like, people just sit there and ask, well, people ask them the right questions, or they sit down and just go through the right questions, write them out, think about them, whatever. It just starts clicking. You're like, yeah, that does make sense. So if you ask enough questions, it starts making more sense, and it's easier to take action. Like if you only ask one question, it's like, yeah, I do want to change, and then that's it. They're like, well, what do I do now? But if you do sit down and continue the conversation through, it just becomes clearer and clearer. You've just got to go, like you said, deeper and deeper and move into that more uncomfortable situations or feelings to figure it out.
Yeah, well, you've got to break it down. It's the whole philosophy of you can't eat an elephant in one bite. And to achieve those big goals, you have to take those small steps. So it's the same with life. It's the same in professional careers. It's the same with, I don't just deal with professional people. I deal with mothers. I deal with, the elderly people that are struggling with something that we're trying to work out, things that are affecting them that could have happened when they were 4 years old, and how it's really shaped their relationships with people, whether it be, the same sex or men or women or partners or brothers, sisters, whatever it is. So everyone's going through something. And I always say that to people, you don't know what people are going through. I'm someone that, a lot of people that know me personally, they're just like, you're the kindest person. I practice that in my everyday. I don't do it. I don't sit there and think I'm going to go out of my way and be kind to someone. That's just what I do. If I'm walking into my apartment, yesterday I was walking into my apartment building and there were an elderly couple, and I was at the lift and I pressed my button. They came down, so it was at ground level. Could have got in the lift and I could have gone. They both had walking sticks. So I went and pressed the button, opened the door for them, went, pressed the button, opened the second door for them and let them out. And they were like so grateful. But that doesn't take much time to do that. So I think understanding, that actually brings me happiness to do that.
Yeah.
And to help people.
Is that a coach thing? Because I 100% agree. And after working with a lot of people, you start to realize that, there are a lot of underlying things and why people are acting mad or angry or sad or in a way that you don't understand. There's obviously something going on, in their life that you just don't know. So just taking the time, relax, not reacting to their reaction helps a lot. But that's something I have learnt, as a coach working with a lot of different people. Is that something that you've always done, or is that, like, going back to the corporate world, was that something you did there as well? Like just having that compassion and patience for people?
Yeah, I think I've always been a really patient person. My husband and I often laugh that when I met him, he was never a patient person. We would drive around a car park to get a car park and I'd be like, it's okay, we'll get one. And he'd be like fuming. Whereas now he is so patient. This time. Yeah. So I think I've always had it in me. And when I look at, and I often talk about this as well with my experience, and this is what makes me so passionate, is I now understand, and this goes back to people understanding what they are to do moving forward if they're not happy. I understand that having a baby, a physical baby, was obviously not what was meant for me. And at the time, that was really, really hard to understand and to digest that. But now I understand that I'm actually here to do something bigger and to maybe help more people. Even just conversations like with you, Jack, or the coaching or the red light therapy. Helping people is what I just love. And having conversations is what I love. And seeing people, the thing I love is when you're talking to someone and you kind of see them and it's like this switch in them and they're like, I get it.
Yep. I agree. And that's an addictive thing as well. I was having this conversation with another guest the other day. He's like, what keeps you going back? And it's like, when I can get somebody in the gym to do something they never thought they could do, even if it's just a push-up. Like, oh, I just did a push-up. And it's like, you can see their mind just click and like, well, what else did I think I can't do, but now I can do? It's very rewarding and addictive in a different way, I guess, to the whole corporate world as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's what I was mentioning before at the beginning too, is a lot. I think that's where people want to work with me, because I'm authentic, but I have that life experience. So yeah, I've got the textbook experience too, but I can actually really put into what I've gone through personally to, one, build that trust quickly, and two, really deep dive and help them, whether it's sitting in something or working through something, putting plans in place. So I think as humans, it's helpful to have, and you mentioned it before, amazing people around you. And that's something that's really important to me, is how do we build this community to help people? Because there are so many people out there that are struggling, especially financially, with life, with work, with partners. The world is a hard place to be in at the moment.
Why do you think that is?
I believe it's just different. It's different, and we've got things that are amazing like AI. We've got tools that are helping us. But as humans, we came from the whole caveman, go and hunt for your food, and we're quite simple beings. And then we've got all of these things thrown at us. It's overwhelming. But then what happens is we rely on these things as well. So Uber, when Uber first came out, you would be so excited if you got an Uber within 5 minutes. Now, if an Uber takes more than 3 minutes, we all get frustrated. So our expectation has gone up as well. There are just so many different things that are being thrown at us as humans that, and I look at the younger generation now too, and I just think, oh God, like when I was growing up and we did different things, I feel like they're missing out on those things, whether it be play in the street until the lights go out or whatever that is. But then I look at their generation and go, well, there's things that we probably missed out on when we were, at their age too. So it's every time you go through those cycles, it's like business, and I speak about going through life cycles. There's going to be pros and cons of both things that are happening.
Yeah, I agree. Technology is a great tool. It's a great thing to help us live better lives. It's just expanding or evolving a lot quicker than what we can. That's for sure. Especially if the advancements
100%.
in AI. But I do think it's only going to help us if we have the right conversations and talk about it and understand who we are. I think it's maybe AI a lot of us are scared of, but then when you're scared of something, it's just putting a mirror up to, who you are and what you're scared. Like if you're scared of something, that's obviously something coming from within. So I think it's just putting a mirror up to who we are, and it's making a lot of people question who they are. I have this conversation a lot of the times because people are scared of AI taking their jobs. I don't think it's going to take jobs. It's just a good tool, like I said, to use. But people associate themselves with their jobs and how they make money way too seriously, or they hold on to that. It's like, I'm just going to use an accountant. Haven't got anything against accountants at all, but AI is very good at accounting, and like it can do that quite well. So if you associate, like if you are an accountant and that's what I do, and I wake up and every day I'm an accountant, and that goes away, you got to question about who you are and what you want to do. And AI is doing that. And I think that's why a lot of people are scared or struggling at the moment. But I do think, like I said, conversations like this will help a lot of people go in the right direction. I did have a thought just before about your journey and recovering from such a traumatic experience. Is there any things that you did that had a big impact? Like exercise. I think everybody should move in a certain way, but I don't think lifting weights is right for everybody. Some people like Pilates, yoga, running. There's 100 different modalities. As long as you are doing something that's going to be helping your body, I'm happy. But same with spiritual, mental health. There's a lot of different tools, but not everybody vibes with each one. But is there any particular thing that you did that had a big impact that helped you get through it?
Definitely. The big impacts were the red light therapy and infrared. And at that time, I could only obtain that maybe once a week or once a fortnight. But I could see the benefits it was already doing, and that was just from that one session. So that was a big one, and that's why, working with Lumaflex is amazing. Saunas, I've always been a big advocate of saunas, obviously physically, but mentally for me more so. There are days where I can go and sit in a sauna and I'll play music or a podcast. Other days I'll literally go and sit there with nothing on in the dark, and I just need to have that time to myself. And massage and acupuncture was something I was already doing before, but I definitely, especially massage, I've been going to the same person for 8 years, and if I don't get it, I feel it mentally and physically. But also understanding that it's okay to go and get help for what I needed to go and talk about. And I think that was the biggest lesson, being a person that, as you mentioned before, putting those walls up and not wanting to show weakness, understanding it's okay to go and see a professional that can help me navigate through the PTSD, the trauma. And it was really beneficial for me, especially pre-events that happened in Bondi, the two pre-events that happened in Bondi, because I live in Bondi. I live so close to what happened. And one of the things I remember her saying to me was, I said, I feel amazing. I'm at work. I feel good. Exercise, you mentioned too, Jack, running, things like that. I play basketball, and touch football. So just keeping my body active, which is something I couldn't really do a lot of with IVF. But I remember the psychologist saying to me that there will be something that triggered me and I'll lose the plot. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. She said, there will be. I'm like, okay. And she said, so what we need to do is understand that, and then we have to put the tools in place to get through that event. I said, okay. That was 3 months before the Bondi stabbing. And I was at Westfield that day because we live so close and we're often there probably 3 times a day. It just so happened that I'd left just before it happened. And for a reason that is just so weird, that I wasn't there, because I would have been there. And I remember the next day I was a complete mess. And I went back to her and spoke to her, and I said, I don't understand. She said, that's your trigger. The reason you've triggered is because you can identify being at the end of your life. So when you're hearing of these stories of people passing away and things like that, you can actually personally, physically, emotionally identify with that. So what we then did was work out the tools that I needed to put in place to go through the emotions if something like that happened, but to be able to get through it a lot quicker. So when the Bondi shooting happened, which we are at Bondi Beach most days, we would have been there that day, but again, we were just randomly away. And I was a mess that night, the next day, but then I worked on what I'd learned and put the tools in place. And the next day I was able to work through it and, you know, reach out to the community and try and help people, because I know that that's what I should be doing, is helping others that were either there, or as a community, everyone's impacted. I think even as Australia, everyone is impacted. So yeah, it was just about really identifying what works for me and being able to identify it and put those in place.
When it comes to getting help like that from a psychologist, like, what do you recommend for people?
Don't be scared of it, and it's not a weakness thing. Also, too, you really need to. I actually went and saw two people. The first person I did a couple of sessions with, and I came home and I said to Paul, that's not my person. I don't feel that I can be open and honest. And I ended up terminating with that person, which they were not happy with. And I knew that they probably weren't going to be happy with, which just cemented that I was right in my feeling. And then I went and saw someone else, which from the first session, I was like, yep, they're great and they understand me. So, and I think that's where people like us as coaches, and especially why I'm really loving, or I'm really passionate and I love life coaching, is because we can help people as well on that side and really identify, especially with trauma as well, and help them to work through things.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's a big thing. People just try, like, find one psychologist, try it, didn't vibe, and then it's like, oh, that didn't work. They do it with personal training or insert coach there. I had this conversation this morning with another podcast guest, and he was saying that you've just got to be yourself, like, especially for coaches. I can't recommend this enough because it's taken me a long time to learn this as well. You've got to find out who you are so you can know who you want to help. And if you don't know that, you're just trying to get everybody and hoard them in, like probably like the first psychologist. It's like, everybody's my client and I can't lose them. And when you come from that place of scarcity scarcity, people just aren't going to vibe with that. Desperation. So I strongly recommend for all coaches just to go through the work and find out who you are. And you might need help from another coach to do that. Find out who you are so you can actually help the people that you want to help.
When I was growing up, I was someone that I wanted everyone to like me. Like I was very popular, but I just went above and beyond. Whereas as I've gotten older, I understand that you're not going to gel with everyone. And I think that through my corporate life, that helped me to understand that when I first got into corporate and leadership, it was hard. And I would be in tears at the end of the day thinking, oh my God, but you have that hard shell that you build. But as you said, you've got to understand, and to service your clients the best, you've got to be what they need, and also understand that it's not going to be the same for everyone, and you're not going to talk to everyone the same. And some people you're going to have to give that tough love to, and others you're going to have to be a little bit more gentle until you get to that point that you can have those tough conversations with. Or some CEOs are like, I've got 5 minutes, you just need to tell me what I need to know. It's about really identifying how to get into those people, and trust is a big thing. But also, as you said, and I said, it's okay if you don't gel with everyone. That's life. It's a lesson to be learned, but that's life.
Yeah. I think that's a hard lesson. Like you said, I was probably similar growing up. I wasn't popular, but I was trying to be popular. So I was trying to please everybody and be everybody's friend. So I was always trying to please, like, not be myself, not be authentic, so I could please other people and get them to like me. So it's a hard lesson to learn, but a good one. It takes a while. It took me a long time, but yeah.
It took me a long
good
time.
Lesson learned.
I'm still learning. Because sometimes,
like we said,
it's like a dagger to the heart. And you're like, what did I do wrong? Or why didn't we gel? And the most important thing as a coach is for the person to find their person, to help them. So there's coaches that I recommend to people, or if I feel that, maybe we're not the right fit, then they're a better fit. It's all about what's going to work best for that person.
Yep, 100%. Any final thoughts for all the listeners listening along?
I've gone through a lot today. It's been a great chat, a really great chat.
Anything else on resilience? I love your story, and I think it's just the best version of resilience. You went through such a hardship, but it sort of helped you find who you were, and it's changed along the way. Like you said, you've got to be able to pivot, where if you were that brick wall and resilient in that way, you wouldn't have pivoted and you wouldn't become the person you are now. So just going with the flow, understanding that some things work, some things don't. They're not failures, and getting to the point where you are now. You're just a good example of resilience.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I think, as I said, with resilience, also don't be afraid to come out of something. I remember, and I had this chat with someone that also had a near-death experience. I said to him, when you see movies or TV shows and you have someone that had a near-death experience and they saw the light, or that wasn't my experience. So I actually thought, oh, did I actually go through it? Like, I don't know. And I was talking to someone that went through a near-death experience, and he had the exact same sort of the thought process as I did. And I remember coming out of it, especially when I got home, but I was so angry. And I couldn't understand why I was angry. And I said that to him, and he said, I was too. And I said, but in the movies, we see that everyone takes life and they're, oh, we're so happy to be alive. And it wasn't angry that I identified. I wasn't angry that it happened to me, but I was angry for different reasons. I had tried for a baby for so long, and in the end, it nearly killed me. Or there were so many different little things that were making me angry. But once I moved past that and understood that the life I thought that I was going to have, or I was meant to have, wasn't going to be like my life anymore. And once I understood that, and then I could work on being okay with that, and then building a new life, a new way that I could live my life, or what my new life would look like. And I'm so lucky that Paul is just such a beautiful supporter of me. He said to me, if it's just you and me and our dog Maya, and we, you help people and you build your business and we travel and we have an amazing life, that is enough for me. As much as I would love to have a baby with you, you are enough for me. So I was so fortunate that I could go, okay, that was what I thought my life was going to be, but moving forward, this is what my life is going to be. And surrounding yourself with the most amazing people in your life, which doing this has been incredible. I keep meeting the most amazing people, but sometimes you're going to lose people along the way that you might have been friends with, but that's okay, because you're in that new stage of your life. And if people on the sidelines also that don't understand what you've been through and can't completely understand, want to judge you, or don't agree with your decisions, that's okay. That's on them. And their opinion of you doesn't matter. So you've got to just really be okay with those things and be able to move forward.
Well, on that note, where can people learn more about you and surround themselves with all that you're doing?
Well, we've got our Lumaflex AU Instagram and website. So that's the red light therapy and infrared. We have the Elysium Instagram as well. But if anyone wants to reach out for any coaching or anything like that, I'll get them to reach out to me directly, either via email. Jack, you might want to include that in your notes. or by phone. I'm always available. So I love to do more of that personal touch when it comes to working with people or groups, whether that be with work, but yeah, connecting with people more so on a coaching level personally.
Love that. It'll all be in the show notes. Kel, thanks for coming on the podcast, and I appreciate your
Thanks
time.
so much. Appreciate it. I can't wait to see all the things that we do together. Thanks, Jack.
What is up? Thanks for being here at the end of the episode. Obviously, you've enjoyed it and it's helped you find your true form. And I bet you know somebody that's going to help find their true form as well. So I'd appreciate it if you could copy this show link, send it to one friend or family member and say, hey, have a listen to this. It's going to help you find your true form. They'll probably have no idea what you're talking about, but it will help them. And I'd appreciate if you could do that. Also, all podcast platforms these days have some sort of algorithm. So the more you interact with this episode, the better it's going to perform and help reach more people and help them find their true form as well. So 5-star review, positive comment, like, share, comment, however you can interact with the episode. I'd appreciate that, and everybody listening that hasn't heard of the True Form podcast is going to appreciate it as well.